triple Regis with Regis, Regidrago, and Registeel was able to get 10th place at the Sydney Regional Championship. We're going to be trying out the team and seeing how well it can perform. But first, let's break down. So I'll try my best to break down the team. First, we have the leftovers Registeel, able to heal some recovery every single turn with the clear body, which is able to prevent it from getting its stats lowered by the opposing side. Think of Intimidate, think of Shadow Ball Split Death Drops, and think of moves like Breaking Swipe, Icy Wind, and more. The stat drops won't affect the Registeel. With the Flying Terror type, great against Sacred Sword, which is a fighting move that can just ignore the defense increases on the Registeel, as well as good into Landorus Incarnate especially. Iron Defense, Body Press, Heavy Slam, and Protect. You run Heavy Slam because it does more damage in Pokemon like Fluttermane, Amoonguss, and Terraghost and Incineroar, because this mon really just wants to click Iron Defense once or twice, and then Body Press will do a ton of damage off a base 150 defense, especially with max investment, because you want the max investment for Pokemon like the Urshifu as well as the other Urshifu, both Water and Dark, that can crit through. Yeah, you want that max defense. So that's the idea here. I'm not exactly sure why it's relaxed with 31 speed IVs. I guess it's for like specific Pokemon in that speed tier, but really it doesn't really change too much. The idea here is this Registeel is really not outspeeding stuff unless it's under Trick Room, and you want to just set up the Iron Defense and the go for the Body Presses. That's basically what you want to do. It's a great Pokemon that can punish Pokemon that Regidrago don't appreciate. Next up, we have the Mental Herb Cresselia, which is able to help out, especially with Taunt and Encore available, with the Levitate ability that is able to make it immune to ground type attacks, with the Tera Steel to help complement it, because with the Levitate and the Tera Steel, you wall standard Landorus Incarnate because you are immune to the Sludge Bomb with the Tera Steel, and you are immune to the ground type attacks thanks to Levitate. You also are able to resist Ice as well as the strong fairy type moves out there in the format with Moonblast, Lunar Blessing, Trick Room, and Protect. So very interesting Cresselia, especially with Protect. We don't commonly see, but Protect is pretty nice because if you need to stall out some turns, it is actually a really nice move to have on Cresselia, because normally you'd be able to double up the Cresselia because maybe you expected like a Trick Room, or you know, of course, Cresselia is a monster that's going to stick around thanks to the Lunar Blessing, and opponents want to get rid of it quickly. But with Protect, it's actually really nice because they also have to fear if the Cresselia protects, they're wasting turns going for it, and that could allow Cresselia to stick around on the field more. Moonblast is able to hit quite a bit, especially the Urshifus, which are pretty nice because Moonblast plus the Body Press is definitely a thing, and it does some pretty good chip damage across the board. And then the EV spread here is just max HP, 164 defense, and 92 special defense with a sassy nature. And across the board, yeah, the Cresselia is just designed to be able to tank a lot of hits in general. It's not really going to be doing much damage because, especially with only Moonblast, which isn't even the same type attack bonus, and a base 75 special attack stat, yeah, you might as well just go out with full bulk, be able to take any attacks that you possibly can, and really just be supporting with the Trick Room for both the Registeel as well as the Regidrago, and stick around thanks to Lunar Blessing, be able to heal. Next up, we have Regidrago with the Dragon's Fang and Dragon's Maw, increasing the power of its Dragon type moves, with its Steel Terra type able to resist super effective Dragon, Ice, and Fairy coverage with Draco Meteor, Dragon Energy, Earth Power, and Protect. So across the board, it is a very strong mon. That Spread Dragon Energy move that it has is absolutely incredible and has been a popular pick for Regulation 2.0, especially with the max special attack investment with the Modest Nature. Base 100 isn't the highest special attack stat, but when you have the multipliers like Dragon's Fang and Dragon's Maw, it really does do a ton of damage. And then Regidrago, it's going to be bulky on this team. Yeah, it is definitely bulky with 20 speed investment only. So it will be able to outspeed base 135s after the Tailwind. Think of like max speed Qianpao and max speed Fluttermane, but also still be pretty slow enough that it can actually take advantage of Trick Room and dish out a ton of damage using that Dragon Energy. It outspeeds stuff like Common Raging Bolts as well as like Rillabooms that have no speed investment. So it is still able to be both a Trick Room and a Tailwind abuser, and then you have investment into its bulk because it has a really high base HP stat but low defenses, but Regidrago can actually tank attacks, especially when invested. You can live stuff like Qianpao Ice Spinners from like Jolly sometimes, and it really just depends on the situation. So you are able to actually survive those, which is actually pretty impressive. Like Moonblast from some Fluttermanes, yeah, it can definitely be able to take attacks pretty decently when positioned and still threaten a huge amount of damage, and of course can take advantage of stuff like the Lunar Blessing from the Cresselia. Next Pokemon we have is going to be Regis, and I'm not sure about this mon. We have an Assault Vest to even take special attacks even better with its already base 200 special defense. The clear body, as I mentioned before, able to prevent stat drops from the opponent's side with the Fire Tera type, which is pretty nice because of the fact that it's able to specifically help out in the Golden Go. It's nice against Chi Fluttermane combinations. So it is a mon that can actually threaten those Pokemon with Icy Wind, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, and Terablast. And yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because we'll move on to the Torn. The Torn actually has Snowscape, so it's not even Blizzard, which is kind of interesting. Icy Wind, so you have speed control, I guess. That could help out like with Ogerpon, especially in like Tailwind Mirrors. Ice Beam for a consistent ice move. Thunderbolt so you can hit like the water Urshifus and then the water types in general. And then you have Terablast with the Tera Fire so you can actually threaten again like Golden Go, maybe something like Chien Pao and more, but as well as like any Tera Steels in general. But yeah, it's definitely a very weird mod. I'm not exactly sure about all the implications. It's really just good against special attackers, which I guess is like nice for the Registeel because the Registeel is fully focused on physically bulk that Regis can threaten like Landorus Incarnate, which can be really annoying for Registeel, as I mentioned before, but also like any really strong special attacking teams that Registeel can't really set up against. Regis could be thrown in and just absorb all those attacks. Again, 244 special attack for the mod's nature, does a ton of damage, 228 HP for the bulk in general. You don't really have to invest in special defense. It's base 200 already, and then 36 speed, which hits 75, which means that after Tailwind with Tornadus, you're able to outspeed Admin Urshifu, and I guess this thing could also take advantage of the Trick Room as well. Not really much to invest in a base 50 speed mon, but across the board, yeah, I guess there are a few things that the Regis can complement the Registeel. We'll see if it's actually able to be utilized though in the video. Ogerpon Heartflame is up next with the Heartflame Mask, allowing it the Heartflame form with the Mold Breaker Fire Tera type for the powerful Ivy Cudgel, giving it the +1 attack boost when it does go for Terastization, with Ivy Cudgel, Follow Me, Woodhammer, and Spiky Shield. This Ogerpon, of course, is just really good in general. Great offensive pressure. Woodhammer just is able to one-shot the Urshifu Rapid Strikes in the format. It's really able to do a ton of damage to any Tera Water type mons, and it is pretty powerful, especially with that Tera Fire Ivy Cudgel as well. This mon can be both a support mon and a really strong attacker with max attack and max speed investment with Jolly Nature, because with that Tailwind, it is just able to dish out a ton of damage against Pokemon like that Landorus Incarnate, which is kind of important. As I mentioned before, Pokemon is pretty strong, so you want to have like one Pokemon that at least outspeeds it and can threaten it, and Tera Fire Ivy Cudgel can one-shot the Landorus Incarnate especially, so very useful there, as well as like just other random mons. You might as well just go max speed at that point. Could be useful against other Ogerpons as well, which can be a bit scary for the team and just threaten some pretty powerful damage while having, again, Follow Me Redirection to help allow Regidrago to do a ton of damage or the Registeel for it to be able to set up. It is a pretty nice typing for the team across the board as well, with being able to, again, hit a lot of Pokemon, especially the Regidrago. Doesn't like the steel types in the format, so having a really strong Ivy Cudgel does really help out there while being a resist to fairy coverage. Final Pokemon on this team is a classic Covert Cloak Tornadus. Prankster gives a +1 priority to any of its non-attacking with Snowscape, Tailwind, Bleakwind Storm, and Taunt. This Tornadus, just a support one. Snowscape is kind of interesting. It gives like a method for Regis, and I guess like to get rid of other weathers like the rain or sun that could actually still be a bit annoying, but giving Regis both a physical defense increase through the Snowscape because of the ice typing, as well as the Assault Vest makes it really hard to handle. But surprisingly, there's no Blizz on the Regis, which means it's not really able to take advantage of like really strong accurate blizzards, which is a bit interesting. Taunt is of course a great support move to prevent like the opponent from setting up. Tailwind, of course, just a really good speed control. Bleakwind Storm, strong flying coverage. And then this Torn set, it's modest, but no investment because of the fact that Torn has a really high special attack stat. You want to still be able to do damage, but still investing most in the bulk with like max HP and 164 defense, which allows you to survive stuff like Surging Strikes from Rapid Strike Urshifu, as well as like even the boosted ones like the Mystic Water sets, and then still having a bit of special defense to be able to take stuff like Fluttermane, Moonblast, and more. Yeah, like this is a classic Torn. It's able to take advantage and just, you know, survive attacks. Go for like maybe multiple, like one Tailwind, one Snowscape, or Taunt, or get some Bleakwind Storm damage. And across the board, just gives the team some more Tailwind offense and allows the Ogerpon to actually be more effective as a offensive sweeper. So how to use this team? Yeah, there are quite a few things about this team that are interesting, and I can't really say too much, but I would say there are quite a few things. The idea behind the Registeel and the Regidrago being paired together is because of the fact that Regidrago has two typings that it doesn't like because, of course, it prevents it from sweeping. Those are going to be the Fairy type mons that are immune to the Dragon type attacks that Regidrago can fire off, and the Steel types and the Tera Steels that can affect the Regidrago. The best way to handle those mons is through Registeel, actually, because of the fact that Heavy Slam handles the Fairy types, while the Body Press does threaten the Steel types. So that's also a really effective way. And there's a lot of physical attackers in the format, so Registeel is able to set up the iron defenses and then go for the body press. Yeah, it can be another different win condition other than just like letting Regidrago, you know, want to blow up everything. Maybe you just want to blow up the things that like make Registeel's life a little bit more problematic, because Regidrago is also really good into stuff like Ogerpon Heartflame, can be good into Landers because you can threaten a one-shot with Draco Meteor. There's a lot that they can complement each other on being able to hit each other's Pokemon that they don't like. And then you have stuff like the Torn with the Tailwind support, the Ogerpon that has both Follow Me to help support the Regidrago and the Registeel while being an offensive piece in itself. You have Tailwind support with the Regidrago and the Ogerpon. You have the Trick Room mode with Lunar Blessing for both Registeel and Regidrago to take advantage of. Yeah, it's a really interesting team. And then we get the Regice with the Snowscape, which I'm not convinced there, but yeah, lead wise, you could go with like Ogerpon Regidrago, which is a classic lead. You could do stuff like Ogerpon plus the Tornadus or Ogerpon plus Cresselia for like speed control plus a very heavy hit. You could go with the Regis with Torn for the Snowscape if Regis is just really good against the team. But yeah, there's like quite a few different things that you can do. Either try and set up the Registeel to clean up in the game because of the iron defense, or you go for like really strong damage output with Regidrago or clean up with Regidrago in the late game. Or just try to sweep mons with heavy offense with Ogerpon Regidrago. There are quite a few different ways that you can play the team. If you'd like to check out the details of the team and the creators' team report, I'll link them down below in the description. And this is going to be the final post-commentated video, because even though I'm not sick now, thankfully I am over the sickness, but this was recorded a couple of weeks ago. And this was when I was sick, so we are going to be doing post-commentary for this one. All right, we have Tornadus, Fluttermane, Urshifu, Incineroar, Farigiraf, and Amoonguss. Now, I do notice that my opponent does have two different forms of speed control, with the Tailwind on the Tornadus and probably Trick Room going to be on that Farigiraf. So here, there isn't exactly a consistent way that I can guarantee that I'm going to win the speed advantage, right? I do have Tailwind with Tornadus, but if they go with the Trick Room route, it's not exactly a great mon to exactly bring in that situation. And then I could bring my own Trick Room route, which would be pretty good, but it is not exactly great into Amoonguss, especially with no safety goggles on the Cresselia. So I feel like a neutral lead would be Ogerpon because it kind of covers the two threats I really want to handle, which is going to be the Fluttermane and the Amoonguss. And I think those are pretty big. I think that the Registeel is pretty good against my opponent's team as well, because it can wall the Farigiraf, especially if it's one of those Throat Spray sets, and can pressure the Fluttermane as well. And I think Regidrago is just super solid as a lead here. So I decided to open up with the Ogerpon and the Regidrago versus going to be the Tornadus and Incineroar. And I'm like, okay. Not exactly the lead I would anticipate, but I assume that this is going to be more of the Tailwind offense mode, maybe the Fluttermane and Urshifu back. So here I'm like, okay, if I led Cresselia, this would have been really nice, but not too bad. I'm just going to make sure that they can't get like a fake out Bleak Windstorm combination and just go for the double protect, because I think it's the safest way to make sure that I don't take a bunch of damage turn one. And it's really important because of Dragon Energy, as of course, if I do get weakened with the Regidrago, I will be doing less damage with that Dragon Energy. So they do go for the fake out, going to be out into the Regidrago, and the Torn is going to set up a tail, which is completely fine. Realistically, my opponent was going to have the speed advantage all along, so that's fine. Now, I know Bleak Windstorm is probably coming out, and I'm probably suspecting the Incineroar might want to switch out into the Fluttermane to, you know, make sure you pressure the Regidrago and make sure you don't take a bunch of damage with Dragon Energy. I'm expecting like Bleak Wind U-turn here potentially, or maybe even protect with the Torn. And here, I gotta make sure I don't take too much damage. I want to make sure that I have resources available. So I'm debating about what I exactly do here. Do I go hard into Cresselia? But I decided instead, you know what? I do need some offense. I need to make sure that my opponent doesn't have speed advantage for the rest of the game. I'm going to go for my Terrify Ivy Cudgel to make sure I don't take that much damage from the Bleak Windstorm, and I'm just going to rip the Dry Energy because I am more expecting the Fluttermane, of course, and if this is like one of the Sash Tornaduses, I want to make sure that I can Ivy Cudgel Dragon Energy get rid of the Torn. So that's basically the idea here, as I do go for the Terastization with my Ogerpon and get the attack boost to negate that Intimidate, as we are going to see Bleak Wind Storm and a dodge on the Ogerpon. It would have been really nice if it was the Regidrago, of course, for the Dragon Energy, but yeah, it did not happen. We do have the speed drop here and knockoff going to come out, which I'm a bit surprised by. So I'm like, do they even have Flutter Mane at this point? As I went for the knockoff there, gets rid of my Dragon Fang, and I am able to get the Ivy Cudgel off into Tornadus, and it actually just one-shots the Torn. So Tornadus is down, which is nice, which means no speed advantage, and I am going to be able to fire off the Dragon Energy. Granted, it is weakened, so Incineroar will be taking it pretty well. It actually does do actually a good amount of damage to the Incineroar though for the Dragon Energy because single target, but Urshifu comes in and now I'm like in a bit of trouble. I do suspect based off the knockoff damage from the previous turn, I should be able to live any hit from the Incineroar, so I can't really play super defensive in this position because I can't let Cresselia switch in on 30 strikes plus knockoff. I'll 100% lose the game that way, so I'm pretty much forced to sack here. I will go for the Follow Me to make sure that my Regidrago doesn't take like a close combat or something, because I do want to try to get a last ditch Draco Meteor into the Urshifu, because it's the only move that can really be a powerful hit. I could go for Draco Meteor into the Incineroar, but I decided going to go for the Urshifu because that's probably the more offensive threat at the current moment. As 30 strikes does knock out the Ogerpon, and I'm like completely okay with that because the Regidrago, assuming that it survives a turn and lands the attack, I'll be in a good spot. Knockoff going to come out, and as I said before, I did suspect that my Regidrago survives, and it did. Draco Meteor does connect thankfully on the Urshifu, one-shotting, and I'm very happy that Urshifu is down here because Urshifu is eliminated, and now it's a 2v3, yet I'm still in a pretty good spot. And they do reveal Flutter Mane, which I'm a bit surprised by, because I thought Flutter Mane would have came in earlier because I had Regidrago, but I'm like, okay, as long as this isn't Shadow Ball plus knockoff into the Cresselia, I'll probably be fine. This booster energy is really important, but speed booster, and thankfully speed booster makes this easier, because if it's speed booster, if it's taunt, it doesn't matter because I have a mental herb, and because I don't think Shadow Ball is really common on speed booster, I should be pretty safe from living a Moonblast plus knockoff combination. So here, just going to attempt to get the Trick Room up and let Regidrago go down, as we see Dazzling Gleam, which I'm a bit surprised to see, but I'm like, okay, that's completely fine here, as that does knock out the Regidrago, and the knockoff is going to come out into the Cresselia, but my Cresselia does take it extremely well. And as I said before, probably no Shadow Ball on the Flutter Mane, so this is the perfect time to get a Trick Room up, and now let Registeel come out and pretty much seal up this game, barring super unlucky RNG here. So I do go out into Registeel. Remember, no Terastization has been utilized on my opponent's part, but Terastization has been used on mine. So I do have to watch out a little bit because there could be like a Tera Ghost on the Incineroar. I would assume at this point it's probably going to be like a Tera Grass on the Incineroar, but I have no idea because I don't think it's a Salt Vest. And yeah, I could be like Goggle, so maybe they are like a Tera Ghost or a Tera Flying. But here, the safest play for me is just to go for the Iron Defense, because one, I make sure that, like, sure, I could body press the Incineroar and potentially pick up the knockout, but what if they go for a Tera? And then I don't knock out with the body press, and then what happens if they go for the double up in the Registeel? Flare Blitz would still hurt the Registeel for a lot of damage. Always better to just go for the Iron Defense here, making sure I survive. As the Flutter Mane goes for Protect, a little bit scared of the Heavy Slam, I suppose, but no Tera from the Incineroar, which I'm like, okay, that's completely fine, as I do get an Iron Defense up with the Registeel, and now I am +2 defense, which is pretty nice, and I will go for Lunar Blessing because there's not really any other move that like my Cresselia would really be clicking in this position, so just go for the Lunar Blessing as they go for the Flare Blitz into the Registeel, and as you can see, I take that extremely well, and I'm like, okay, this probably isn't Tera Ghost on the Incineroar at this point, because if they were Tera Ghost, they would have probably clicked the Tera Ghost. I think there was no reason really not to go for the Tera Ghost in that position, but yeah, now my Registeel going to be able to eat up those Flare Blitzes again, barring any critical hits. So now I'm just going to go for a Moonblast, and I'm going to go for Heavy Slam into the Flutter Mane, because I'm still trying to anticipate a Tera from the Incineroar, but the Flutter Mane just protected. Don't see a reason not to just go for Moonblast plus the Heavy Slam, because Heavy Slam sometimes can miss a knockout Flutter Mane, so might as well just go for the double up, ensure the KO. But yeah, my opponent forfeits, realizing there's no chance. So really nice. Even though the start wasn't exactly the greatest, was it able to be put in a decent spot. Alright, next we have Dragonite King, Gambit, Gouging Fire, Chien-Pao, Annihilape, and Rillaboom. The Annihilape's a bit strange, but it actually is pretty rough for my team to handle because it is a ghost type, which means body press isn't going to be effective. There's moves like Taunt and Final Gambit that could be scary. Yeah, it's not an easy exactly mon to handle, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do against this? Because Ogerpon Heart Flame, it's like tricky because it's nice in a King Gambit, but not great in a Real Boom. And also, like, it just goes down to Terra Normal Extreme Speed, so I don't want to really bring it. So I'm deciding, okay, maybe I could try to bait an option with Tornadus and Regis, use the Snowscape to boost up my defense on the Regis so it can take attacks, and then try to go for the Registeel in the late game. Because if I set up Registeel early, I'm a bit scared of like Sacred Sword Chien Pao and like what other options they have. And they have a lot of ways that I can blow up my team. So I'm gonna like try to slow down the pacing, make them burn some resources, and then try to do a Registeel in the end. So we see an interesting lead here, which is gonna be Gougy and Annihilate. And this is kind of a tricky spot because I'm like, okay, the Annihilate lead is always going to be scary no matter what. And I'm like, okay, what is it? Choice Scarf? Is it something else? And here I'm like, okay, I think this is the freest howl of my opponent's life with the Gouging Fire. I'm just going to taunt it to make sure the Annihilate can't boost up, because a boosted Annihilate would be really, really terrifying, especially when stacked. I don't know if this is bulk up. I don't know if this is Choice Scarf, but I'm like, okay, now what else am I going to do? I'm like, do I just go for the damage straight away? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to target down the Gouging Fire because I still don't know what this Annihilate has. And it could go for Terra, and I don't want to sack Rage Fist if it's not Choice Scarf. We're going to see the Terastallization come out from my opponent, which is going to be the Annihilate into the Tera Steel. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty good because that means that now Registeel will be able to body press that Annihilate. So not that bad here, as they did attempt to go for the Howl, which is really good for me, and they went for a close combat. I'm like, okay, that's actually perfect because one, you lower your defenses. Regis actually lives the close combat too, so I'm like, okay, that's very, very good for me. And now I'm going to be able to get an Ice Beam off into the Gouging, which realistically doesn't do that much damage. I'm a little bit underwhelmed by it, but I'm like, okay, still not a terrible option. And now I'm like trying to figure out, how do I want to set this up? Because if I go for a Tailwind, then sure, I won't even be faster than these Mons because the Registeel is just such an awkward speed stat. Do I want to risk the Bleak Wind Storm? And I'm like calculating these risks because I'm like, if I Bleak Wind Storm and get the Defiant, it's not exactly going to be pretty. I'm hoping that close combat usually means it is going to be the Choice Scarf on the Annihilate, but I'm like, maybe I could get away with switching into Cresselia on a close combat and just gain some Bleak Wind damage because that will definitely put these Pokemon into range of attack. So that's kind of the idea here, as I will retreat my Regis to go out into my Cresselia, especially because I'm thinking like Breaking Swipe might come out in Rage Fist, so that's fine, as they do go for the Breaking Swipe here into my Cresselia, which is completely fine, and Torn is able to take that as well, and they go for Rage Fist. So this Annihilate is actually going to be fast, and it's not choice locked, which is a little bit annoying because I just went for Bleak Wind Storm, and I do connect with both Pokemon, fortunately, but no speed drop, which is very, very good. And now I'm debating about, do I even go for it again, or do I just go for a Taunt into Annihilate? Like, I want the Bleak Wind Storm in case of like Final Gambit or covering for a switch as well, but this is where it gets a bit tricky because I do need to get the Trick Room up. So here, I'm going to Taunt the Annihilate so it can't set up, and I'm like, do I go for the Trick Room here? And I'm like, yes, I think I always go for the Trick Room here, as I'm hoping they kill Torn so I can get the free switch into Registeel, but we'll see what happens. As I do Taunt the Annihilate, as they go for a Heat Crash into my Torn. And Torn actually survives, which is not great for me. I would actually prefer to switch, as they went for a Taunt into the Cresselia, which I could have got more Bleak Wind Storm damage, maybe even knocked out the Gouging Fire, because now I'm actually in an awkward spot here, as now the Taunt wears off from the Gouging Fire, and now a bit of a weird position. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for Bleak Wind Storm because it would knock out the Gouging Fire. It most likely switches, or maybe it decides to go for like a Protect here, which is fine as well. But I'm going to get Registeel in for the Cresselia, which I don't think they're going to target the Cresselia, if anything. So I do need to get Registeel in to abuse some turns as of the Trick Room before it expires. We're going to see Burning Bulwark come out. I'm like, okay, Burning Bulwark is actually pretty annoying because it could burn my Registeel. So that's something that I do have to keep in mind. I could have also taunted through the Burning Bulwark as well. So that's something I could have done. And here I get the Bleak Wind Storm speed drop into the attack boost. I'm like, okay, it's not terrible because Registeel should be able to eat this and that'll be fine, as I am able to eat up the damage with the Registeel. I'm like, okay, obviously wasn't the best case, but now I'm in a position to potentially get a double knockout here, because now I should be able to get a body press into the Annihilate. They don't usually run Protect on these taunt sets, and I should be able to get a Bleakwind Storm off into the Gouging Fire. So Body Press does come out, take the knockdown and Annihilate, and I'm like, okay, cool. As long as I hit this Bleakwind Storm, I'm in a really good spot. I'll take the knockdown Gouging Fire, and then it will be a 2v4. And even though that the Registeel isn't set up, I'm still in a pretty good spot, as Bleakwind Storm does the classic and it misses, which is really bad for me because they get a Heat Crash off into my Registeel. And even though it doesn't take the knockout, now my Registeel is very, very low on HP. And now it's actually very concerning because I was actually in a really healthy spot before where I could scout what the last two is. And I'm like, okay, then I could plan accordingly. Now my opponent still has resources available, my Trick Room turns are being burnt out, and my Registeel is super weakened, so it is not ideal. As Dragonite comes out, I'm like, okay, Dragonite is definitely an interesting option. I'm like, okay, I have to kind of go for Bleakwind Storm. I can't really afford to switch, and I am just going to go for the Iron Defense here with my Registeel because the Dragonite can only really, usually on these teams, are either loaded dice or they are choice band. And if they're choice band, they have to lock into a move, and if they're loaded dice, then it's not that big of a deal. Iron Defense should allow me to live a Heat Crash. They reveal their choice banded, they go for Stomping Tantrum. I'm like, as long as I hit this Bleakwind Storm, I'm fine because I'll knock out the Gouging Fire, and then the Dragonite's locked into Stomping Tantrum against Cresselia and Torn, as Bleakwind Storm misses again on the Gouging Fire. It crits the Dragonite, but it's like whatever at that point. Gets a speed drop on the Dragonite, and then Breaking Sweat comes out to knock out my Torn. I'm like, can I even win this? I'm like, can I even win this? I've gotten decently unlucky. The only way this could have gone worse is if the Bleakwind Storm on the first time I hit the Annihilate got the attack rise as well from Defiance. So I'm like, I think I'm in a pretty bad spot here, and I don't see how I can really win with this endgame. And I'm like, okay, because don't forget that my opponent, even though they don't have Tera available and they are probably choice locked with the Dragonite in order to knock out, I'm still in a pretty bad spot. So here, I was debating about going for Terrify Terablast to catch the Dragonite switching out, and maybe I could win with solo Cresselia, but at this point, it's looking really, really dire. And I am debating about like what moves I go for, and I'm like, okay, I think I go for like Thunderbolt and Moonblast, maybe targets the Dragonite and catch maybe the POW in the back, but yeah, it's just like looking really bad. So I'm gonna try to catch the Protect on the Gouging Fire, the Burning Bulwark, and double up the Dragonite, expecting maybe like a hard swap in the POW. And I'm like, oh, that speed drop also allowed the Dragonite to outspeed my Regice, which I was like, oh my goodness, this is really bad. I do go for the Moonblast into the Dragonite. It doesn't take the knockout, and here, Trigger returns to normal, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can really win here because I guess it really just depends on the back. But yeah, at this point, I'm like, I don't think I could really win realistically because even if it's like POW back, I think I just lose at that point. So I do forfeit the match. So it shows how unlucky I could be with Bleakwind Storm. There's a reason why I dropped Tord in tournaments, but yeah, like maybe I could have afforded not to, but in some cases, I do have to go for Bleakwind, and yeah. All right, we have the next game against, actually it's the tournament host, which is funny. That's a +1. He's also a VGC creator on YouTube. And yeah, I was like, okay, this is a very scary team because they have like a Trick Room side spam mode with the Entity Hattering. They got the Beats of Ruin with the Chiyu with Fluttermane combination. And then they have the Whimsicott paired with Terrakion. And this is very, very spooky because there's a lot of different lead combinations that could absolutely obliterate my team. Terrakion is not exactly an easy Pokemon for me to handle. There's just a lot of things that are not easy to handle, I feel. But yeah, so I start off with Torn plus Ogerpon because on the bright side, Ogerpon is guaranteed to be max speed on the team. So I'm guaranteed to outspeed the Terrakion by 1 point. Max speed Terrakion actually does underspeed the Ogerpon, which is really, really important here. It might even be by 2 points if I'm not mistaken, but yeah, I know that my Ogerpon can outspeed, which is a good thing. A Regice doesn't really do much here, and my opponent has it has like 2 fairies, actually 3 fairies with Whimsicott, Fluttermane, and Hattering, so Regidrago can't really sweep as a Regidrago. So I pretty much am forced to go with Cresselia and Registeel in the back. So we see the Whimsicott plus the Terrakion here versus my Torn plus my Ogerpon. I'm like, okay, I don't know if there's going to be Terastallization immediately from the Terrakion. I don't even know what Terastallization it is. Maybe it's poison, because I do remember that that's a did play in one of the draft leagues that I played, and he did use Tera Poison, if I'm not mistaken, a lot on the Terrakion, so I could definitely see that as well. I'm just going to go for Tailwind, and I'm just going to go for the Woodhammer immediately, because the Whimsicott Encore stuff is something I'm really fearing. So they do go for Protect here, and I'm like, okay, that's completely fine, as they go for the Tailwind, and that's fine. We're going to match Tailwinds, and I'm going to be in a okay spot. It's not exactly the most incredible position, but this is definitely a doable one. And now the next turn is like, okay, what am I going to see from my opponent? Because there are still a lot of things that could go on. They could go for a Encore, and it would be pretty bad. So here I'm actually going to go for a Taunt and Spiky Shield. I don't think Indeedee or Hatterene are switching in. And the idea, and I don't think they're going to go for the beat up combination right away. I'm just trying to scout for an Encore and Terastization from the Terrakion to maybe resist a Woodhammer. So I'm going to go for Spiky Shield to prevent an Encore being locked in the Woodhammer against a potential non-effective move on the Terrakion. So go for the Taunt on the Whimsicott. As they reveal Fling, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I know that even with Psychic Terrain that they could maybe not run Encore, but I've definitely seen Whimsicott usually with Encore even on the Psychic Terrain stuff, so I want to make sure that I'm not falling for that. As a Rock Slide comes down to Torn, I'm like, that's completely fine. So what's nice about Fling is even if you Fling into a Protect or Spiky Shield, it uses up the item here, and I'm like, okay, no more Fling option, which is nice. It was probably like Fling's King Rock to burn up like the flinch turn. So here, I'm going to go for a super aggressive read, because here I'm like, I don't exactly have a safe line here. I need to get the call right on this Terrakion, whether it Terras or not. And I'm pretty sure it's either going to Terra or it's going to switch. So I'm going to switch out my Torn because I would like to preserve the Tailwind for later in the game. And I'm going to go out into my Cresselia, which is pretty good here, I'd say, to be able to sponge up the attacks. And I'm going to go for the Terrifier Ivy Cudgel, because here I'm hoping that, I don't know my Terrakion calcs. It could be bulky, but I'm assuming it's probably fast on this team, because you probably want the Terrakion to outspeed stuff like Lando, for instance. I'm going to go for Terrifier Ivy Cudgel, and I'm just going to hope that +1 Ivy Cudgel from max attack Ogerpon can one-shot a neutral Terrakion, because +1 with Embody Aspect and Terra is really strong. So we're going to see the Terrakion does Terrasilize, and I see Grass, and I'm like, I got the call right. I didn't think it was Grass, but that does make sense against like Urshifu, Certain Strikes, and Earth Power. I thought it was going to be Poison, like I was committed to Poison at this time, but they do reveal the beat up here on the Whimsicott is going to go for it into Terrakion to give it the justified boost, and I was like, yes, this is perfect. This is perfect, because Ivy Cudgel should take the knockout into the Terrakion. And I am very happy here, because this was a very big commitment here that I needed to go for and get this call right. If they just stayed in regular form against my Woodhammer, it would have been pretty dangerous. So Ivy Cudgel is going to come out into the Terrakion, and it does eliminate the Terrakion. I'm like, yes, that is a very, very good turn for me. And now I'm in a pretty good spot. Granted, there are still some dangerous mons like the Fluttermane Chiyu combination in the back, but we are going to see which one is going to come out, which is going to be the Chiyu. And I'm like, okay, what's nice about this is the Whimsicott is still taunted, and Ivy Cudgel can actually still knock out the Chiyu potentially because of how strong it is. And I think that does realize that and just forfeits. I think was in a pretty tough spot against max speed Ogerpon, because the +1 Ivy Cudgel was just going to be able to really blow through his team, and they didn't really have the best answer of like removing the Cresselia either. So was able to get a really big turn and really seal up that game, which was nice. Was able to get the game-winning call there. All right, we get a rematch with Tornadus, Fluttermane, Urshifu, Incineroar, the Farigiraf, and the Amoonguss. And here it's like, okay, it was definitely interesting, but we did know some things. One, the Torn and the Urshifu were both not Focus Sash, and the Incineroar is not Assault Vest likely on this team with how much it took from the Dragon Energy. And we saw that it was Speed Booster on the Fluttermane. I was more scared of like a Specs variant or a Special Attack Booster variant earlier, so that's why I didn't want to lead Cresselia. But now I'm like, okay, I can probably just lead Cresselia here and be pretty safe, because I could just go for the Trick Room route. And here I'm going to be like, okay, I think I can just lead off with Cresselia plus Regidrago. It's pretty good into like stuff like the Urshifu and the Incineroar, and can pressure the Amoonguss as well. And then I'll have Ogerpon Heartflame plus my Registeel in the back. Still similar to the idea, but I don't want to lead the Ogerpon Heartflame because of like the Torn that led last time. So Torn Urshifu is going to lead here, and I pretty much have like the best lead I could really ask for. Cresselia with Mental Herb to prevent a taunt here, and I can go for like a Trick Room. So not that bad. I just am going to go for a Trick Room immediately, and I'm debating about, do I go for a Draco Meteor or do I just fire off the Dragon Energy immediately? And I decide, you know what, I'm going to fire off the Draco Meteor. Even if they switch out in a Flutter Mane, I'm in a good spot. I don't know what they're going to really do. Maybe Torn switches out into the Flutter Mane, as I was blanking out for a sec, but they actually decide to retreat the Urshifu into the Flare Mane instead, and that's completely fine because it's not like Torn is doing that much damage here anyway. And basically, both of these Pokemon don't exactly put on pressure against Registeel, so all I have to do is really just switch out into Registeel the next turn. They do reveal Taunt on the Tornadus, and as I said before, completely fine. I have Mental Herb on my Cresselia. I am chilling here as I'm always able to get the Trick Room up. And even though the Draco Meteor does burn into the Flutter Mane, doing no damage, Trick Room does go up with the Cresselia, and now I'm in a very good spot. All I have to do is just get in my Registeel, and I'll be in a very nice position. So here I'm going to Moonblast and just go out into Registeel, because right now, even though Regidrago puts on pressure into the right slot, as well as like prevents the Flare Mane from switching out, I would like the Cresselia just to come in, or just to stay in, and I think just like fire off some Moonblast, because it really punishes the Urshifu without taking too much damage. So here I'm like, okay, just bring the Registeel for the Regidrago slot. Can't really get hurt by anything. At the worst case, I'm getting like taunted in one of the next couple turns, but I don't even have to set up because right now I'm not really taking that much damage. Once the taunt wears off from Cresselia, if they go for it again, all I have to do is Lunar Blessing. And again, my Registeel is actually in a really good offensive position because Heavy Slam and Body Press will do a good amount of damage to my opponent's team, especially with the Moonblast double up. As we do see the Torrent switch out, and we are going to see the Incineroar come in, and I'm like, okay, I get extra damage into the Incineroar that's coming in, and now I just get a free Iron Defense the next turn. So here I'm very happy about like these couple of turns and how they're playing out, as I am able to get some chip damage into the Incineroar, a bit of chip, which is nice, and Dazzling Gleam going to be coming out, not really doing too much damage at all into my team. Now, my Registeel, very good spot. They could go for Fake Out, but like, what are they going to do? Fake Out Taunt? That kind of wastes a turn. I'm still going to be able to burn some pretty good damage. So here, I'm just going to decide, you know, don't want to let Registeel maybe get taunted here from the Flare Mane, because we saw Speed Booster, and the only thing we know about the Flare Mane is it has Protect and Dazzling Gleam. Maybe it could be double taunt, maybe it's just straight attacks, but I decided just to protect the Registeel and go for a Moonblast into Flare Mane, because they have to really respect Registeel. One, if I set up, it's pretty bad for them, as well as the fact that it could just like one-shot like both of these Pokemon potentially. So I go for the Moonblast into Flare Mane to ensure that I will always be able to knock out with Heavy Slam. And they do reveal Shadow Ball actually on the Flare Mane, so I'm like, okay, that's definitely interesting. But right now, I'm still in a pretty good spot, I'd say here, as now I can go for a Lunar Blessing here very safely, and I'm debating about what do I do with the Registeel. Do I just want to go for the Iron Defense, or do I want to go for Heavy Slam? But realistically, there's a chance that Flare Mane protects, so just going to go for it, as we do see the Flare Mane does decide to go for Protect. I'm not risking like Flare Blitz doing a ton of damage. Flare Blitz plus Shadow Ball would actually do a lot to the Registeel if I don't have the Iron Defense, so we'll just go for a simple Lunar Blessing, heal up the Cresselia, and just go for a Iron Defense. And I know with this Lunar Blessing, because we used our Mental up earlier, Cresselia is itemless and takes the knockoff fantastically. And now, very easy spot where I can actually get some damage. And I'm trying to debate about exactly what I want to do here with my Pokemon. Like, do I want to go for a Heavy Slam into the Flare Mane? Do I want to just go for the Body Press into the Incineroar? Like, I have a few options that I'm like really considering, because it's like, who is the actual biggest threat? At least at this point, I'm pretty sure that the Flutter Mane's last move is going to be Icy Wind and or Moonblast here. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm just going to go for Body Press and Incineroar, because realistically, they haven't clicked Terra Ghost any of the times. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go for it, because I'm not risking Flare Blitz crit. They go out in a Torn, which is completely fine for me. They actually make a double switch, which is smart, because the Urshifu coming in wouldn't have taken that much damage from the Heavy Slam, and the Torn doesn't take too much damage from the Body Press. Though it's still going to hurt, because it's plus 2 Body Press from Registeel. Does a decent amount, as I am able to get a Lunar Blessing with my Cresselia and heal up the Cresselia. So now I should be able to live Surging Strikes. I don't think I'll live a Rain boosted Surging Strikes, but now it's like, okay, pretty much you have to kind of threaten the Cresselia as well. I can pretty much just always go for either a Heavy Slam or a Body Press here into the Torn or the Urshifu. They go for the Rain Dance. I'm like, Registeel definitely eats one of the attacks here. So they go for the Rain Dance. They go for the Surging Strikes into the Cresselia. And that was the only way they could eliminate the Cresselia. So I knew Cresselia was most likely going down, but it's like completely fine. So I'm going to be able to get a good amount of damage off into the Urshifu. And the Body Press is going to put in range of any attack from the rest of my team. So not the biggest deal because Urshifu right now is probably one of the bigger threats to me overall. So Body Press is going to come out and Urshifu does a pretty decent amount. And now I can pretty much just go out into Regidrago or Ogerpon. I'm going to choose Regidrago because Regidrago puts on more offensive pressure immediately with that Dragon Energy. And it kind of just click it really, because even if they go for like close combat plus weak windstorm, that's another turn that they're disrespecting the Registeel. So I'm just gonna go for a body press into the Urshifu as well as Dragon Energy. Even if they protect, like the Torn goes down the next turn, it's completely fine. So they go for a Tailwind, completely acceptable, and they go for Surging Strikes into Registeel. And as you can see, Registeel, it takes the Surging Strikes pretty well. That's a rain boosted Surging Strikes, and that does like a little bit more than half to my Registeel. That's just how bulky Registeel is, as Dragon Energy is going to be able to blow up the Tornadus as well as the Urshifu. And now, because they set up Rain, they're not exactly looking good into the Registeel with Flare Blitz Eater. So at this point, I'm like pretty sure that after another turn of lefties, and I mean the turn after the healing that I'm about to get, I should be able to live any combination from the Incineroar as well as a Shadow Ball from the Flutter Mane. So right now, looking like a pretty good spot. And another Pokemon that's also looking really solid is going to be my Ogerpon Heartflame. So my Ogerpon Heartflame will be able to always just threaten the Flutter Mane, and it's no big deal. We're going to see Incineroar and Flutter Mane come out, and I'm pretty sure that at this point, I think I have this game locked. I can't really see like how I really exactly lose here. Maybe a double crit here, but even then, it's looking really unlikely here. So here, it's just a safe line of just double protecting on the fake out because we saw its speed booster Flutter Mane with Dazzling Gleam with Shadow Ball, unless it's like a Calm Mind variant, which I'm very skeptic of. I just don't see it going to be the Calm Mind Flutter Mane, and even if it is the Calm Mind Flutter Mane, it doesn't really change any significant calcs of like my end game plan with Ogerpon plus my Registeel, as long as like the Incineroar doesn't dodge a Draco Meteor the next turn. Knockoff going to come out into the Registeel, but yeah, at this point, like, it doesn't matter. The Registeel is going to be able to heal from another turn of leftovers, and now I'm going to be in a pretty good spot here to start dishing out damage. And I think I go for, was it Earth Power? No, I go for Dragon Energy as well as Body Press because we still haven't seen a Tera, and I really am expecting at this point for them to double up the Registeel with Shadow Ball, because at this point, like, I feel like it's their best option. But they do reveal the Tera. It's going to be the Tera Water on Incineroar. So it kind of makes sense of why they haven't really went for the Tera. But even then, like, that's not going to save this Incineroar, really. They go for Dazzling Gleam, which is completely fine. Actually does a bit more damage to my Regidrago than I thought it was going to, as we do see a knockoff double up into the Regidrago. I'm like, okay. I think I should just click Draco Meteor realistically into the Incineroar. I went for the Dry Energy in case like the Flutter Mane maybe had a specific Tera, but yeah, maybe I should just went for the Draco Meteor instead here into the Incineroar, as Body Press still is able to one-shot the Incineroar. So yeah, as I said before, that Body Press not gonna, or that Tera not gonna save the Incineroar from that Body Press, because this Registeel too much defense. As yeah, at this point, Flutter Mane alone, I have an Ogerpon Heartflame as well as a Registeel, pretty healthy that can just go for the Heavy Slam. I'm going to go for the attacks here because I don't think Shadow Ball crit even knocks out the Registeel at this point, as the bout is going to be forfeited. So just was able to get a really nice start compared to the previous game, was able to get Trick 'em up, the lead was beautiful, was able to set up Registeel, get into a nice position to set up the Iron Defense, and then really just like, again, just get as much damage as I possibly can while they were playing a bit passive and had to deny the Trick Room. All right, we have Tornadus, Regidrago, Male Entity, Iron Crown, Landorus Incarnate, and Amoonguss. So some Tailwind with the male entity and not the female entity. And you know what's funny? When you have all special attackers, there is a mon called Regis that has base 200 special defense. Right here, it's looking pretty good. It hits the Regidrago, it hits the Landers, and it's looking like a Regis game. The Regis is actually going to go crazy here. So just going to go with Torn Regis, have some Follow Me support with the Ogerpon Heartflame. It also pressures the Iron Crown as well as the Amoonguss and the Landorus, and gonna bring the Registeel because, you know, like they can't really break through the Registeel other than really the Landorus. So here it's like, this is looking like a phenomenal matchup here, but I gotta be a little bit cautious. I don't exactly have a spread move for Regis, and it's still a Regis. I'm gonna have to take several turns here, but we are gonna see the lead of the Torn plus the Regidrago, and I'm like, okay, how much damage are you actually doing to Regis? I'm kind of curious here. Like, I'm very curious here, and I'm just gonna go for a Snowscape immediately, or I was debating about like several turns, like do I go for a Tailwind, do I go for a Taunt here, And unfortunately, I don't have Blizz on the Regis. If I had Blizz on the Regis, it'd be really nice. So I actually decided just to go out into my Registeel instead, so I can maintain speed control, because realistically these Pokemon can't touch the Registeel either, so I might as well just make sure that like I don't lose a resource early. Torn is still valuable. I don't really need the defense increase here, so might as well save like Tailwind in case I need it for the later parts of the game. So I'm just going to go out into my Registeel, because also if the Regidrago reveals this like Tera Steel and goes for it immediately, then I threaten it with Body Press the next turn. So they decide to go for Protect with Regidrago and just set up the tail, and I'm like, okay, that's completely fine. Like, sure, you get your Tailwind up, I get some free chip damage into Torn, and I get to find out if you're like Cover Cloak onto Torn, for instance. So that's still pretty solid for me. So Icy Wind as the Regice is spinning, and does actually some pretty good damage with the Icy Wind in a Torn, and it does reveal it is going to be the Cover Cloak set, because I really doubt it's going to be a Clear Amulet set. So here, just going to go for an Icy Wind plus Body Press, double up into the Regidrago. There's really no switching that really helps it here, and the Teras that it could have really would be neutral to one of the attacks at most, so I'm just going to be able to fire off some pretty nice damage with the Body Press plus the Icy Wind, and really just try to maintain maybe a speed advantage later in the game. We are going to see a Terastallization come out from my opponent. It's going to reveal it is going to be the Regidrago, and they go for the Tera Steel. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to bring out the Registeel after thinking about it, because now I can go for that Body Press plus the Icy Wind combination. They go for a Bleak Wind Storm, and look at how little damage that does. That really does nothing. As Dry Energy, it's like, okay, that does more damage, but you know what? I'm still taking it super well. Icy Wind, unfortunately, does miss the Drago, which is a bit unfortunate. Every bit of damage does help out, of course, when it comes to Dry Energy. But at this point, like, the Body Press is still doing a very solid chunk, as you can see, into that Regidrago. And now I'm in a pretty good spot, because now they don't even have their Dry Energy big button click. I am a bit worried if Draco Meteor does knock out the Regice, because Draco Meteor is stronger as a single target option. So I'm like debating about it. I'm like, okay, Registeel, probably just gonna switch out here, and I'm gonna go for Icy Wind here into this slot. The reason I decide, hey, I'm not gonna go for the Body Press is because I might as well save some health, and there is the also potential chance that you do go for the Earth Power into the Registeel. There's, depending on like a Draco Meteor into Regice, or if they go for Earth Power and a Registeel, I could see either or. And I decide, you know what, might as well get my Torn in and try to knock out their Torn, so maybe I could get like speed advantage for later in the game. So that's kind of my thought process, because then I would be able to really crush it with my Ogerpon Heartflame, because Ogerpon Heartflame under Tailwind is looking really good into them. They go for Bleak Wind Storm, and the Regice does dodge. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty nice if they did go for the Draco Meteor. They do crit my Torn in response though, but they did actually go for the Earth Power into my Torn. So I did make the right call here, and I am able to go for the Icy Wind, and I do connect with both. And it doesn't show the spinning this time, which is unfortunate, but I do eliminate the Torn. And the Regidrago is having a speed drop, as well as their Tailwind turns are expiring. Pretty good position, I'd say. Pretty good position. So now it's like, okay, what do they bring out next? They decide to bring out the Entity, and I'm like, okay, that's completely fine. It's probably going to be the Iron Crown in the back at that point. I'm like, okay, they have one more turn of Tailwind. Do I want a Tailwind? Because the Entity could go for a Trick Room. And if they go for Trick Room, that could be a little bit annoying. So I'm like trying to debate about like, do I just click Bleak Wind Storm here? Or do I go for a Tailwind anyway? Because it really just depends on their speed stat on the Crown. And I was thinking about like, are you even Trick Room the Entity? Because I could just go for Tailwind as well as Icy Wind, and that could put me in a good spot. Or do I just go for like a raw Bleak Wind? Because I think Torn could be going down here, so it might not be worth it. But I do decide in the end just to go for the Bleak Wind Storm and an Ice Beam into the Entity. And they actually reveal after you from the Entity. So I'm like, okay, that's completely fine, as they go for the Draco Meteor into the Regice, and Regice just hangs on, man. Regice just doesn't care about the special attacks. As Bleak Wind Storm does connect with both Pokemon, I do take the knockout into the Regidrago, and I do get a KO into the Tera Steel one, so no more Tera for the rest of the game. I also went for the Ice Beam Bleak Wind Storm in case there was like a Protect plus a Trick Room attempt from the Entity. So that's the reason why I decided to go for it. So the Entity does go down as well, but at this point, it's looking like it's pretty over. There's one more Pokemon in my opponent's back, but it cannot win the end game, I'll tell you that much. We're going to see the Iron Crown pop off, and yeah, I mean, I still have my Ogerpon Heartflame, and I even have a Registeel, so yeah, like Registeel doesn't technically beat this because of the expanding force will actually do a bunch of damage from speed booster or special attack booster, but at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter because Ogerpon just wins here. So I'm debating about what I exactly want to do here. I decide to go for the Bleak Wind Storm and I go for the Icy Wind. It really does not matter what I do here because since it wasn't speed booster, it can't outspeed my Ogerpon Heartflame anyway, so I can just go for Ivy Cudgel. Like a Tailwind doesn't really change anything here unless maybe I want to keep like the spread like a bit hidden, but it really doesn't matter. Again, Ogerpon Heartflame next to the Registeel. Looking like just a guaranteed win at this point. Like if they had Tailwind up, then I would have had to get Tailwind up and then I still win anyway. But yeah, there's not really anything they can do about it. Again, Registeel, again, Ogerpon, Heartflame, and the Regice just was really tough for my opponent to handle, ironically. As I'm going to go for Terrify, Ivy Cudgel, and I guess I'm just going to Iron Defense in case they protect. But it really does not matter at this point. They cannot win. We saw that they were boost energy, so they can't have Focus Sash or some very obscure item that can maybe in some world, I guess, maybe have a comeback. Like Focus Band is like the only one I could really think of that, or Bright Powder that could really come out of this. But yeah, go for the Ivy Cudgel here into the Iron Crown, and that will take the knockout into Iron Crown, and that will be a win. So Regice on the board. Regice actually had a really good matchup here. Funny enough, like Regice against a bunch of special attackers, especially with Assault Vest. Who knew you can't really damage this mod? What a mod you did not want to see if you're my opponent, but it really just paid off. All right, we have Regice, Alola Ninetales, the Incineroar Farigiraf, Wellspring Ogerpon, and the Fluttermane. Here, I would never say that I would ever play a Regice mirror, but yeah, we're playing a Regice, at least Regice versus Regice. The rest of the team is very different. And here, I'm trying to think about this, and I can't really see anything that really breaks through Registeel. Registeel kind of just eats this team. As long as it has Iron Defenses, as long as there's no crits, yeah, I should be in a pretty good spot with Registeel. So there isn't really much that they could do. I'm deciding just to lead the Ogerpon Heartflame plus the Registeel. It's a pretty safe way to set up the Registeel. Bring the Cresselia in the back so I can Lunar Blessing, as well as bring Regice because, unironically, Regice is actually pretty decent against my opponent's team. They don't have the best ways of dealing damage to Regice if they decide to bring the Snow Mode with the Alolan Ninetales. So that's decided what I like to do because can't really bring Regidrago against the Fairies and the Regice, and the Torn against Snow is not really that great, especially since I, have Snowscape as my weather move. So we are going to see the Incineroar and the Fluttermane lead versus my Ogerpon Heartflame and the Registeel, and I think that this is a pretty solid lead for me. There isn't really much I could do here. I'm suspecting that the Fluttermane is going to be choice specs because we didn't see a booster energy on that Fluttermane. So here, this is going to burn with a double protect, burn the fake out, make sure that they can't flinch me and get a bunch of damage off because I want to also scout for like what the Fluttermane could potentially lock into here. So super safe play across the board. There really isn't much that they could do here to punish me unless the Fluttermane has some kind of setup move or if the Incineroar has some random setup move, but like real unlikely in this scenario. So we are going to see the Fluttermane retreat. Now I'm going to take like the Heavy Slam or the Ivy Cudgel the following turn, and we are going to see the Ogerpon come in from my opponent's side, so the Wellspring will be out. And luckily I didn't go for like a hard Terra Fire immediately because that probably would have knocked out the Ogerpon. Then they could go for an Ivy Cudgel and they would one-shot my Ogerpon. So just a simple double protect is super safe, as they actually went for the taunt into the Registeel. So they do have taunt, which is a little bit annoying. The only thing I'm scared of here is potential like Encore from the Ogerpon, and I do need Registeel set up in this game. So I'm just going to go for a simple Follow Me Iron Defense. It prevents an Encore, it prevents a taunt from coming out from the Incineroar into the Registeel. So pretty simple turn. I don't think this is Encore on the Ogerpon. Like I'm assuming it's just standard Follow Me at this point. But yeah, I just want to make sure that Registeel can set up one Iron Defense. And the only way I think they could knock out my Ogerpon Heartflame is if they go for Ivy Cudgel Flare Blitz, or if they Tera their Ogerpon and go for Ivy Cudgel and one attack from the Incineroar, like a U-turn or a knockoff. So should be fine here. No Tera, so I do get a Follow Me off with my Ogerpon Heartflame, and I should be able to live the turn as they do go for the Ivy Cudgel with the Ogerpon, and they get a crit immediately, which is a little bit annoying because they reveal knockoff. If I would have definitely survived the knockoff without the critical hit from the Ivy Cudgel, so a little bit frustrating there because I do lose a resource that like would have been really nice, especially because it gave me one more play around again, as I mentioned before. Could have been the Encore Ogerpon, but now I just basically got to bank on it not being Encore Ogerpon at this point. and I decide to go out in Cresselia. So here, I could protect in Trick Room. Like, Trick Room is pretty free, but I'm just going to go for Body Press because at this point, they also have to respect the Cresselia because the Cresselia, like, will allow my Registeel to keep healing, and they can't even do much damage to my Registeel at this point anyway, so they kind of have to try and get rid of resources that I have, so they kind of have to play aggressive at this point. And once I get to Trick them up, even if they Encore, they can't really stall out my Registeel that much either because they haven't gotten that much damage on Cresselia. I can Lunar Blessing, wait out the Encore expiring, and then still be in a pretty decent spot afterwards. So I just gotta watch out for Perish Song potentially from the Flutter Mane because that's the only way I really see them breaking through the Registeel. As they do decide to go for a Terra Grass with Incineroar, I'm like, okay, that's completely fine. I went for the Body Press in Incineroar because one, it has Taunt, but B, it also has, like, against the Regice, the most offensive pressure. So they go for the Ivy Cudgel into the Cresselia. Thankfully, no crit this time from either of the attacks because that allows my Cresselia to survive and get to Trick 'em up, which is massive. I get the Body Press off into the Incineroar, which is going to consume its Citrus Berry afterward, and I'm like, it's going to be close with the next Body Press KOs. I think it might, but could be close. I do get to trick him off with the Cresselia, and now I'm actually in a pretty decent spot because now I pretty much have full control with my Registeel. I'm going to go for Protect and Iron Defense here because, one, there could be a Flutter Mane switch for either one. Like, I could definitely see Flutter Mane coming in for the Incineroar, as well as Spiky Shield from the Ogerpon, and this kind of covers that option. And also, like, if they go for Follow Me, I don't KO the Ogerpon with one Body Press, but I think I might KO it after another Iron Defense. So that's why I decided to go for another Iron Defense. It also allows me to take the damage from the Incineroar. So I felt like this was the best play possible as they went for Follow Me and they went for Flare Blitz in my Registeel. And as you can see, after +4 defense, I take 36 HP from the Flare Blitz. Not 36%, 36 HP. That's not even a quarter of my health. So this Registeel, basically at this point, looking to claim some bodies with this Body Press. And now I'm going to be able to go for Body Press. I decided to target the Incineroar and I just decided to go for Lunar Blessing because I'm pretty sure after another Lunar Blessing, I'll be out of range of Ivy Cudgel. They decide to switch out the Incineroar this time around and actually go out on a Flutter Mane, which is completely fine for me because even then it's still not like a terrible trade-off here. As we do go for the Body Press, it does fail into the Flutter Mane. Could have went for the Wellspring, but this is still fine. And I do go for the Lunar Blessing with the Cresselia. So we'll be able to heal HP, get back my Registeel to full health, and Ivy Cudgel will come out from the Ogerpon, and it does not crit. So my Cresselia is still hanging around, and I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I don't go down to Perish Songs or lose another Mon because then Perish Song gets a little bit concerning. I'm just going to go for the Body Press, and I'm going to hard swap my Cresselia into my Regice because it's a pretty safe play for the most part. Regice will be able to eat any attack from the Flutter Mane, and the Ogerpon Wellspring, honestly more of the annoying Pokemon because of the fact that it has Follow Me pressure and it does the most damage to my Regice in the back. So I decide, you know what, I might as well just target down at that side because again, like, Shadow Ball isn't doing crazy amounts of damage from the Flutter Mane and I am pretty healthy, so I'm not really scared of it. So I will go out in with the Cresselia, go into my Regice, which is very healthy, ready to take on these special attacks from the Flutter Mane, as the Flutter Mane actually doubles out, which is a nice play for my opponents and trying to cover for the Heavy Slam that I could go for, but realistically I was just never going to click Heavy Slam, or there was a chance I do, but here I'd rather just get rid of the Ogerpon. So they make a nice play though with the Spiky Shield. They're catching me on like the targets for the Registeel attack, but at this point it's still fine because we're still under the Trick Room. My Regice and my Registeel are in really good positions just to claim some heavy knockouts because again, they don't really have the biggest threats here. I'm going to be able to go for like a Body Press here the next turn and an Ice Beam, and sure, they can play around this Trick Room, but even then, like, I still have Terrestrialization available. They haven't really gotten too much, but they have been doing well with stalling out the Trick Room. Right now, I can just go for a Body Press and an Ice Beam because under this Trick Room, I'm pretty sure that my Regice is going to be the slowest Mon between the Regice and the Incineroar, so I'm in a pretty decent spot. They go for a Fake Out into my Regice, as I do go for a Body Press into the Ogerpon, and as I said before, with the +4, we are able to take the knockout into the Ogerpon. So no more redirection, really good, and that's also another mod they can't really like stall out, you know, the Perish Song with, if they do have Perish Song, and that's what they're going for, because at this point, I don't really see how they're breaking through the rest of the team, but Trick Room does return to normal. So I'm in a pretty good spot. And once I got rid of the Ogerpon Wellspring, I'm like, okay, out of the remaining Pokemon, I don't want to Tera Registeel. I don't have to. Regice's Tera is freed up. I can absorb the Fairy type attacks, the Fire type moves. So I'm just going to go for a Ice Beam into the Incineroar as well as a Heavy Slam. There really is not really much that they could do to punish here. So I'm just going to go straight for the attacks. There really, again, isn't anything, as they could have what in the back? They could have the Yellow Ninetales. They could have the Regice, or they could have Ferrigraph. All Pokemon, not really threats I really need to be concerned about. So might as well just use my Tera on the Regice because I'll be able to absorb the attacks. Only worst case is that they have Power Gem on the Flare Main, but that means they don't have Parasong, so that means Registeel should win without any crits. We are going to see Shadow Ball come out into the Registeel, doing about a third as they go for a Flare Blitz into the Regice. It will absorb that completely fine. They take a bit of recoil, which means that this Ice Beam definitely takes a knockout into the Tera Grass Incineroar, so Incineroar will go down. The Terastization I don't have to worry about. The Flutter Mane should be locked into the Shadow Ball at this point, which means I don't have to worry about like a Perish Song endgame, as I will go for the Heavy Slam into the Flutter Mane. And will I take the knockout? I do not take the knockout. I barely missed the knockout into the Flutter Mane. Unfortunately, Registeel not exactly the strongest there, but at this point, like, the game is pretty much in a good spot, as we will see the final Pokemon on my opponent's team, and I'm like, regardless, it should still be fine. Regis. Now, I should be fine realistically. I'm just worried if they like double crit my Registeel. I don't think they're gonna double up my Regice, because I don't even think that's like, I don't even think a double crit would knock out my Regice. That's like basically my thought process. So I'm just gonna go for Protect with Registeel in case they get a double crit, and I'm just gonna go for the KO and the Flutter Mane with my Regice, because then I think it's like super unlikely my opponent can win, other than like crazy raw Blizzard hits into Blizzard Freeze. And look at that Shadow Ball, man. The Shadow Ball does nothing, as I will go for the Terablast into the Flutter Mane and take the knockout into the Flutter Mane. So Flutter Mane goes down, and it is the Regice versus the Regis. We got 3 Regis on the field. Thunderbolt gonna come out into the Regice. Yeah, double crit was not knocking me out. Though they did get a Thunderbolt para, but you know, it's not really that big of a deal at this point. Like, I just go for a Body Press into the Regice, and I think I go to Cresselia here, which I think is kind of a mistake here. I think my logic was if they went for like Blizzard, they had to double hit and they had to freeze my Registeel at the same time. I think I should just stayed in with Regice, because if they KO one eventually, I could just Lunar Blessing to win the game. Most likely, because I assume my Cresselia might be faster. All right, we have Whimsicott, Chi-Yu, Urshifu, Chien-Pao, the Raging Bolt, and Flutter Mane. So we got like a pretty offensive Tailwind team, and here I'm trying to figure out what the items are. It could be like Choice Scarf on the Chi-Yu, could be like Choice Specs or even Focus Sash on the Chi-Yu. Urshifu could probably be the Dark type, but it's most likely the Water type Urshifu, especially if you're pairing it with Chien-Pao and you already have double Dark. Here I decide I'm just gonna lead Torn Ogerpon and just see how the game goes, because it's like good into like a lot of my opponent's mons. It's good into the Whimsicott immediately. It's good into Flutter Mane. It's good into the Chi-Yu if I decide to go for Terastization. So I think it's the best one. I bring Regice because it's good into the Raging Bolt, as well as like can take attacks if I have to go for Terrifier. And then I'm gonna bring either Regidrago or Registeel. I decided to bring the Regidrago because I think even though there is double fairy, like the other non-fairy mods just give me so many troubles, especially the Raging Bolt, that I think I might have to bring the Regidrago as a backup, and Registeel's just not that great into like the Chi-Yu, Urshifu, and the Sacred Sword potential from Chien-Pao. So this is where I decided to go. I decided to lead the Torn plus the Ogerpon Heartflame versus the Chi-Yu and the Whimsicott. And here it's kind of an interesting position because I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are they going to exactly go for? And they do have Beads of Ruin that is reducing the special defense of all Pokemon in the field. I can't really switch here. I kind of have to play on the aggressive. So I decide, you know what, since there's Whimsicott with Fallen Core, I'm going to have to go for Terrifier, which should be safe. And I'm just going to go for a Bleak Wind immediately. The reason I'm going to go for Bleak Wind is because I can get some damage off, which would be really nice here. It covers for Sash Chi-Yu. It also like covers for Taunt from the Whimsicott as well. Like the only play this doesn't really cover for is like the Sunny Day immediately, but I just don't think that's likely. They actually retreat the Chi-Yu into the Urshifu, and I'm like, okay, that's a very interesting option. Maybe they're scared of Stomping Tantrum immediately. Maybe they were hard calling me going for the Terrifier Ivy Cudgel plus Tailwind. But at this point, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good for me. That's pretty good for me. Because I'll get the Bleak Wind and get some pretty good damage here. As they do go for the taunt with the Whimsicott to prevent the Tailwind from being set up for my Torn. And I go for the Ivy Cudgel. This is a +1 Terrifier Ivy Cudgel and Urshifu. Still going to do a pretty good amount of damage, as you see. And it's like, do I hit Bleak Wind? I hit both Bleak Winds. And guess what? I also KO the Whimsicott in response. So I get an incredible double knockout. Granted, it's still a bit tricky depending on like what they have in the back. Chiyu's still a bit of a problem. I did get rid of the Urshifu, one of the biggest threats to my Terrifier Ogerpon. But I do have to try to figure out how do I get the Tailwind back up with my Tornadus, because ideally I would want Tailwind set up for my Ogerpon to win, because Ogerpon is the mon that's pretty much winning the game. They bring out the Chiyu and they bring out the Flutter Mane, and it really depends on what the Flutter Mane item is here, because that's also another big factor. Beats of Ruin gonna activate, and we also see the Flutter Mane most likely is Choice Specs, so not exactly the easiest mon to handle. So I decide here I am just gonna sack my Regidrago at this point, because Regidrago against the Specs Flutter Mane probably is not ideal. I'm like hoping, okay, maybe they click Dazzle would be a good position, and then I'd be able to get my Torn back in, and then go for Tailwind plus the Ivy Cudgel again. Should basically lock this up, because the Flutter Mane could just outspeed my Ogerpon, go for Power Gem. Then it would be an awkward spot. So this is why I decide, hey, I'm going to go out into Regidrago. I'll be fine if Regidrago goes down, and if not, I'll absorb a Heat Wave just fine, I suppose. And then they still have to go for Power Gem and Heat Wave the next turn, because these mons like to be choiced. We're going to see the Terastization come out from my opponent. I'm like, okay, what exactly are you clicking here? I'm going to be the Terra Flutter Mane and the real Terra Fairy. I'm like, okay, if you click Dazzling Gleam, best case scenario, I get the Tailwind up and then the Ivy Cudgel, and then I should just win the game on the spot here. So I do go for the Spiky Shield with my Ogerpon, as they decide to go for a Heat Wave with the Chiyu, and we find out the Chiyu most likely is Choice Scarf because it outsped the Flutter Mane. So they go for a Heat Wave, completely fine there, and they go for a Moonblast, which a little bit awkward. They target the Ogerpon. I'm like, okay, this makes it easier to handle. I know now it's Choice Scarf Chiyu, and I know that it is probably the Flutter that is Specs. Now here, I'm just gonna double up in the Chiyu, because if I get the double up in the Chiyu, I think that I just win with my Regis, and I don't really want to play the hard switch around, because that gives my opponents way more opportunities to like crit in the game. So I just decide to attack here, because if I switch, there's not really a win con I could really go for, I feel. So I'm just gonna go for it, as they double up my Regidrago, take the knockout, but Ivy Cudgel will come out into the Chiyu, and it does take the knockout, because that is just how strong Ogerpon Heartflame is with the Terastization and the +1 from my body aspect. And now the game is over, because I still have my Ogerpon plus Torn, and I have an Assault Vest Regis in the back. So that's all I really needed to secure the game. Just go for the tail and just go for the Ivy Cudgel. Battle gonna be forfeit, and a very fast-paced one. But yeah, the opponents didn't really have a great lead for me. I was able to get really strong damage, double knockout turn 1, which was incredible. And then endgame, they had to lock into moves. And all right, we have a very tricky matchup here with Glimmora, Chiyu, Flutter Mane, Urshifu, Tornadus, and Landis-Varian. This is a tricky one, because Glimmora is not easy for my team to handle. Next to Chiyu, that could blow up the Registeel. They also have a Lando T, which is actually pretty concerning, because it does do a ton of damage to my team. It intimidates the Ogerpon, so I can't knock it out. Yeah, it's not an easy one. And then I don't know if this is going to be the Water Urshifu or the Dark Urshifu. I'm assuming it's going to be like maybe Sunny Day stuff, so I could see it, but I could also just see it being like a water like normal. So here I decide the trigger mode is really hard to handle, because I feel like I'm going to probably have to Terrastalize whether Ogerpon or Regis immediately. I decide to lead Torn Regis, because I'm pretty sure that Torn is leading. So I can at least threaten the Torn. If it's like Glimmora, I could always like just decide to attack here and hopefully live one Meteor Beam. But we're going to see the Chiyu plus the Tornadus lead. And here it's tricky, because I was already knowing that I was probably going to have to commit to Terastization with either Regis or the Ogerpon, like straight up. So here I'm pretty much going to have to do that. There's really not much other choice here. And I decide to just go for the Bleak Wind plus the Icy Wind. I was debating about Snowscape in case I'm worried about the Sunny Day, but I think they could also just go for Taunt with Torn, which would be pretty devastating if I don't take the knockout on a Torn and they get a Taunt plus their own Tailwind up. I think it's like really devastating for me. So here I'm just going to go for a double up here as they go for the Tera Ghost here, scared of the Ice Beam here most likely, or maybe like Snowscape Blizzard. But this works out in my favor because Chi-Yu shouldn't be able to knock out the Torn here unless they went for their for their own Bleak Wind Storm plus their Heat Wave, because I should be in a spot where I could knock out the Torn, and we'll see what they decide to go for. But Terrifier will come out from the Regice here as they decide to go for the Tailwind with their Tornadus. So I'm actually going to be in a good spot, assuming I land the Bleak Wind Storms, and they go for Snarl, and I'm like, okay, I've Covert Cloak and I've Clear Body, so that's actually perfect for me. I think they read the Terrassization on my Regice, but it still worked out pretty well for me, as I am able to get an Ice Beam off into their Torn, and I just eliminate the Torn immediately. So their Terrassazition's gone, their Tailwind speed advantage is gone. Now I can mash a Tailwind and be in a pretty decent spot, I'd say. As now it's just, what's the next strat? Because I still have to stall out their turn to Tailwind in order to be effective. I mean, I do have my Ogerpon Heartflame, which is still in a pretty decent spot. But yeah, it really just depends on who they have in the back. Like Lando T could come in and click Rock Slide, and it's not ideal realistically, but yeah, I'm like debating about like what lines do I have. And now we see the Urshifu, and it's going to be the Dark Urshifu, which actually makes things a bit easier because now I can get a Tailwind, or I could go for a Bleak Wind Storm here and match a Tailwind, and I could get speed advantage with the Icy Wind if I want to. I'm a bit curious if Wicked Blow plus Snarl will even knock out the Regice realistically, because they didn't have Terrassization available. So I'm just going to go for a Tailwind and Icy Wind because ideally I get to break the Focus Sash, get a bit of chip damage onto both. Icy Wind should actually do some pretty decent damage because it beats Ruin as well. And they do go for a Snarl Wicked Blow into my Torn, and that is completely fine. Tornadus goes down, but it's got the Tailwind up, which is pretty much what I needed it to do. And now with this Icy Wind that I am able to land, now both the Chi-Yu and the Urshifu are now going to be slower than whatever I bring out. So that's kind of important here because now I can go out into Regidrago, or I could go out into Ogerpon and threaten huge amounts of damage. And I'm kind of debating about this because I'm like, I don't think it should be Scarf for Chi-Yu, but like Assault Regice calcs are not exactly something I have in mind. So I'm trying to figure out like, okay, is it better to go Ogerpon? And I decided to go Ogerpon. The reason I decided to go Ogerpon is also because of the fact that I liked having Ogerpon because if they have Flutter Mane, it could still be a mon that they could switch into. So here, also like the thing is the Regidrago is also slow on this team, so I don't think it actually was able to outspeed these Pokemon even after the Icy. So I was like, okay, I think I have to go out into Ogerpon, and I'm pretty sure that I just have to click like a Wood Hammer plus another attack here. I'm just gonna go for the Icy Wind plus the Wood Hammer double up into the Urshifu because I still get some pressure. And we do see the Chi switch out, which is so good for me because I get to catch whatever comes in with an Icy Wind, which I felt was ideal. They go on a Flutter Mane. I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty good. I still get that speed drop on Flutter Mane, so it is going to be that booster energy, going to be the speed booster, and that's actually pretty good for me. As Wood Hammer does come out, no protect from the Urshifu, and I do take the knockout into the Urshifu with that Wood Hammer. So that is perfect because if they detected, I might have just had to bank on my Ogerpon potentially being faster than our Flutter Mane, but now don't have to worry about the Urshifu, the biggest threat. Icy Wind will come out into the Flutter Mane, lower its speed, and that's pretty nice because now I can simply just go for like a Spiky Shield here and Terrifier Regice against Chi Flutter with an Assault Vest. Doesn't seem likely that I will have too many problems here. So I'm just going to go for another Icy Wind, and I'm going to go for a Spiky Shield with my Ogerpon. I think the Icy Wind's kind of unnecessary at this point, but I just want to make sure I maintain speed advantage for like maybe Regidrago to come in later on. And I know that Thunderbolt or Ice Move's not taking a knockout either of these Pokemon, so I might as well just try to get this speed advantage with Icy Wind for like in case I absolutely need it later on. As they go for the Heat Wave here, and I'm like completely fine. As I just want to make sure that I'm outspeeding everything, even under like the Tailwind, and after this turn of Tailwind, they are able to still out Tailwind. So Icy Wind will land onto both here, and I'm in a pretty comfortable spot because I should be able to take the knockout now onto either of these Pokemon with a Wood Hammer. I go for the Wood Hammer to Chi-Yu because the Flutter Mane isn't choice locked, or the Chi-Yu is more likely to be choice locked than the Flutter Mane, which reveal boost energy so it can protect. So I go for the double up, they forfeit the game, and I'm able to win. So Could have been tricky, but thankfully I was able to get like a pretty good lead and then was able to maintain speed advantage throughout. All right, we have Fluttermane, Archaludon with Urshifu, Amoonguss, Entei, and Rillaboom. So a little bit of a strange team. There's no Chien-Pao on this team. There's an Archaludon without Rain, double grass. So definitely not sure what to really expect here. Now, I am debating about like what set it is probably on Archaludon. I think it's probably going to be one of those sturdy sets. I assume Booster Energy Fluttermane, maybe Choice Band on the Entei. And I'm trying to debate about, okay, Assault's Rillaboom, Urshifu could be whatever, and Amoonguss, Rocky Helmet, or Citrus both make sense here. And they don't exactly have the best ways of dealing with the Registeel if I'm set up properly. So I'm going to lead Ogerpon plus the Registeel. It's like the safest way to set up. Cresselia with the Lunar Blessing makes a ton of sense to me. And I am debating about my last being the Regidrago because Regis doesn't really do too well. There's a lot of heavy offense from the physical attackers. Torn, it's like okay. Bleakwind Storm's actually pretty decent here, but I don't think it's really necessary. So decide to go with those four, and we'll see what my opponent decides to go here. But I do feel that Registeel is a pretty good line here, and we're going to see Amoonguss plus Entei. So I do think that this could be scary. Amoonguss, of course, depends on the terrestrialization, could be a little bit annoying. If it's fair, I'll probably have to double it up with Ivy Cudgel plus Heavy Slam to take the knockout. Spore is pretty annoying. I do have the Lunar Blessing with Cresselia, but unfortunately I'm not Goggle, so I can't like switch in on the safe or on the Spore safely. So I decide just to go for a double protect. These Pokemon generally can't set up. Maybe I could see a terrestrialization come out from one of my opponent. My opponent has to be fearful of Ivy Cudgel, like Tera Fire immediately, which I could go for. I could go for Tera Fire, Ivy Cudgel, knock out the Amoonguss. It would allow me to live like a Sacred Fire or Flare Blitz if they want to go for it. So right here, I feel it's the safest play just to go for a double protect. And my opponent actually does go for terrestrialization, going for a super aggressive play immediately. And it works out huge for me because now I'm getting to see the Tera Water Amoonguss. And Tera Water Amoonguss is good for me for a few different reasons. One, it's weak to the Wood Hammer, but also it no longer will be able to resist the body presses. So that was like their main answer to body press Registeel. There is a Fluttermane, but it does take Heavy Slam not so well. So I am in a pretty decent spot because they tear it immediately. They go for a Sacred Fire into my Registeel, and now I don't have to worry about any terrestrializations for the rest of it, as they do go for a Spore into my Registeel. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a really solid spot here because I can go for Wood Hammer to KO the Amoonguss, and I'm just going to go out in a Cresselia because I'll be able to take the Sacred Fire just fine. I don't want to commit any terrestrializations just yet. They could protect Amoonguss, but sometimes I could definitely see this being like maybe Pollen Puff, no protect Amoonguss as well. So I'm just going to make sure I get rid of that Amoonguss as quick as possible because that's the most annoying Pokemon for me. They do make a smart switch. The Amoonguss does retreat here, and they decide to switch out into Archaludon. I'm like, okay, I guess I get to break the sturdy, which is pretty nice. Maybe Tera Fire Ivy Cudgel could knock it out the next turn. So Wood Hammer comes out and like, that's, yeah, I know it's quad resistant, but it has bulk and it's stamina. I'm like, okay, it's not the sturdy set. Good to know. So a little bit unfortunate for me there, as they do go for a Sacred Fire into Cresselia, and they don't get the burn. So Cresselia will be able to hang around unless they double it up the next turn. But I pretty much am suspecting, yeah, that's probably Choice Banded here. So I'm in a bit of a weird spot now. At this point, I'm debating on what I do here, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to go for a Follow Me and a Trick Room. Because here, I'm kind of hoping they take the knockout into the Ogerpon, and then I can get in my Regidrago and click Dragon Energy because they already committed to Tera on the Amoonguss. I don't have to worry about Tera Fairy on any of these Pokemon. So they go for Sacred Fire into the Ogerpon, which is able to take the knockout into Ogerpon, which I was pretty much okay with. I want to save my Tera in case I need it for the Registeel, and the Archaludon is going to go for Flash Cannon, which is completely fine for me here. So we'll be able to eat that up just fine and get the Trick Room off, and now I can bring out my Regidrago. It's kind of been a weird spot with the trade. The Archaludon actually ended up giving me a lot more trouble than I expected. But now Regidrago comes in, and I get to click Dragon Energy. And even if Amoonguss comes out, I have Lunar Blessing with Cresselia. So even if they Spore, I can still go for Lunar Blessing my Cresselia and wake up the Regidrago so it can go for Dragon Energy. So now I'm in a pretty good spot. The only annoying part is, of course, is the Fluttermane coming in, and where is it coming out into? Since it's the... I'm assuming at this point, none of these Pokemon have Protect because it is Choice Band on the Entei, as well as I don't know what the item is on the Regi or on the Archalon, it could still have Protect, but it could be the Assault Vest set. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that Giant Energy is pretty nice here because they don't exactly have the best switching. And yeah, they switch out the Entei here. I'm like expecting Flare Main, but they actually bring out Amoonguss. I'm like, okay, Amoonguss is not taking 2 of those, so that's actually pretty good for me. I go for the Moonblast here into Archalon. Just to get the damage because I'm like, okay, maybe it puts it in dry energy range, especially if it's not Assault Vest, and we do get the dry energy off. So huge amount of damage into both. Not a KO, unfortunately, which is unfortunate, as they will be able to heal with the Citrus Berry. And now I could be risking like a potential Draco Meteor from the Archalon, as we are going to see Snarl come out. I'm like, okay, that's perfectly fine at this point, because now the Regidrago, even though it's at -1 special attack, should still be able to blow up this team right here. So I should be able to safely just go for Lunar Blessing and the Dragon Energy. And I don't really see too much that they could do here other than maybe Pollen Puff with their Amoonguss if they have it. If they go for Spore, they have to choose a Spore slot as either the Regidrago, which is going to wake up immediately, or the Crest, which is unfortunate, but I'll still get a double knockout here with the Regidrago most likely. And then the Entei going to be locked in to an attack means that I think that the Registeel going to be in a phenomenal spot regardless. So here I think I'm in a pretty comfortable spot, as long as it's not maybe like Sport or Cresselia, maybe go out into Flutter Mane. But even then, like, I still think I'm in a pretty good position afterward because I'd still be able to go on sleep turns if that's the case. Pollen Puff is going to come out from the Amoonguss, so they are going to be able to heal the Archalon out of the range of the Dragon Energy most likely, because even though I'm back to full health with the Regidrago, it is still a Archalon that has an Assault Vest, and I did get a special attack drop thanks to Snarl. Dragon Energy coming out once again does take the knockout into Amoonguss, doesn't take the knockout on Archalon, and I'm pretty sure if I Moonblasted, I still wasn't KOing because of the special attack drop earlier. So Amoonguss goes down, which is nice, and the Archalon will be able to fire an attack in response and go for the Body Press, which has been boosted, and they crit me, which is a really annoying crit. It is a really annoying crit, but it's still fine-ish, but they get to bring out their Entei in response, and I'm like, okay, this is not an easy spot. I might have to risk this here of whether they read me and go for an extreme speed or if they go for the Sacred Fire, because this Regidrago, they might want to get rid of it and go for the extreme speed. But if they go for Sacred Fire, I'm in a bad spot. So kind of have to get the call right on whether the Entei is just clicking the extreme speed or if it's clicking the Sacred Fire, calling the read here on the Registeel. And I'm like, maybe I could win with Regidrago even if there's a case where they don't extreme speed or where they go for a Sacred Fire. But yeah, they do go for the extreme speed, which is fortunate for me. I get a Moonblast. Unfortunately, I don't take the knock on Archalon, so if they go for a Body Press double up, it's pretty bad. But thankfully, they Body Press the Cresselia. If they Body Press the Registeel, I think I still live, even with all the boosts I gave Archalon, just because Registeel has really good defense. But now I'm actually in a really good spot because now Entei locked into extreme speed, which is actually really good for me. I can take the knockout to Archalon with a Moonblast if I want to and just go for an Iron Defense. And now I'm in a pretty decent position because now I'm going to be able to get boosts here. As they go for extreme speed into Cresselia, but Cresselia is able to hang on. I pretty much expected to survive the extreme speed anyway if they went for it. So ends up being perfect. Moonblast is going to come out into Archalon, takes a knockout. Registeel is boosted up with the Iron Defense, and now I don't have to worry about the Registeel or Registeel getting hit by a Sacred Fire or anything. So now I should be pretty good against anything that they brought in the back because Registeel's looking pretty good. They already used some extreme speed power points earlier, so I'm pretty confident that Registeel is going to be a really nice spot here. As Flare Mane is going to come in, and it does reveal that it is going to be one of those booster energy Flare Mane sets, and is it speed or special attack? It is speed, which makes it easier for me because now all I have to do is just go for the heavy slam into the Flutter Mane, and I can protect the Cresselia to stall out a turn because they can't damage the Registeel with what they have here, or I could just attempt to go for a Trick Room, like either one's fine. I decide to just go for the protect to stall out a turn because it means like they decide to protect the Flutter Mane. Could be a thing, but also like, again, draw more extreme speed power points is a thing here that could be important. So we do see the extreme speed into protect. A Shadow Ball going to come out from the speed booster Flutter Mane into the Registeel. Doesn't really do too much damage. Heavy Slam is actually able to one-shot the Flutter Mane, which I was a little bit surprised by. That Flutter Mane not having much bulk. And now game is pretty much over. They can't really do anything. I just go for a Body Press very easily here with my Registeel into the Entei. And we already know it's Choice Band because it one-shot the Ogerpon with Sacred Fire. And I'm going to go for a Lunar Blessing because I might as well just go for the Lunar Blessing. They go for the Extreme Speed into Cresselia to take the knockout. And yeah, like even if they do that, it's still regardless fine, as I mentioned before, because Registeel just wins this 1v1. But I still also have my Regidrago on the back. And now I can just go for Earth Power plus Body Press and just secure the knockout because the Entei, again, locked into Extreme Speed. Can't really do too much. So a little bit of a spooky endgame, especially because of the crit from earlier onto the Regidrago, but thankfully didn't really matter in the endgame, especially because I was able to catch the Extreme Speed, which was important. They knock out the Regidrago as I am able to knock out the Entei, and that is a good game. So Registeel really just able to kind of do a lot there, especially because they decided to commit to terrestrialization. I assumed the Amoonguss didn't have Protect, so it kind of had to guess whether I was attacking or going the offense. Thankfully for me, I was able to catch them on the Tera, and because they Terra'd early, it means that I could just play around them not having Tera for the rest of the game, which was great. All right, we have Urshifu, King Gambit, Rillaboom, Chien-Pao, Dragonite, and Gouging Fire. And 6 physical attackers against an Iron Defense Registeel is something we love to see. Yet it's still a bit tricky because Gouging Fire is a little bit weird for the team because with Tera Fairy, it's actually hard to damage it because Breaking Swipe, lowering the attack on Ogerpon is not exactly great. It does a lot of damage to Regidrago. And Registeel actually is a little bit annoyed if it's the Burning Bulwark set specifically. Like this team, normally they run Protect, especially in competition, but on ladder they can definitely run Burning Bulwark, and that could be very annoying for the Registeel. So I have to figure out what exactly do I like here in this matchup, because I want to make sure that my Registeel is actually safe to set up. So I decide I'm going to lead what I expect could force maybe terrestrialization from the Gouging Fire immediately so I can actually damage it and make it easier for myself. I'm going to lead everything that they can try to bring that is able to threaten the Registeel, and yeah, try to stop Registeel in the mid game if possible. Now, this could backfire if I take too much damage to start, but I think Ogerpon plus Regidrago is not too bad. Dragon Energy is pretty effective into a lot of things. If they lead Urshifu, I can Draco Meteor. I wasn't sure, but I was like pretty confident that they run Taunt on this Urshifu, if I'm not mistaken, if this is the top 32 EUIC team that I am thinking of. So I decide, hey, I'm just going to lead it here. As they lead Urshifu plus the Gouging Fire, I'm like, okay, there's some gambles that I might have to make because there is terrestrialization on both of these Pokemon. That could be a little bit spooky. There's definitely a potential play of like Breaking Swipe immediately. And yeah, it's not exactly easy for me to handle. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, they're probably going to Tera Fairy to Gouging Fire. It's super safe. Are they going to attack with the Urshifu or not is a big question. So I decide turn 1, I'm going to Ivy Cudgel just straight up the Gouging Fire because I need damage on Gouging Fire. It's just a little bit annoying to my team. And if they go for like Breaking Swipe plus like Surging Strikes or Close Combat, I'm just going to go for Draco Meteor and try to KO the Urshifu. It's kind of a mind game because the Urshifu can Protect here, but I can't really Protect against Urshifu because obviously could hit to Protect. So I'd either want to either call it, maybe Earth Power, Ivy Cudgel the Gouging Fire if I expect Protect from Urshifu, or I'm just going to go straight for the Draco Meteor. As they go for the Tera Fairy immediately with the Gouging, I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. What did the Urshifu do? Because that's the important part. And they click Protect. So I kind of get this play wrong. I could have maybe doubled up the Gouging Fire. As they go for Howl, which I'm a bit shocked they went for Howl. I thought they were going to go for Breaking Swipe here, if anything. But this still is like, okay, that's fine, as I do get an Ivy Cudgel off into the Gouging Fire. And it actually does some pretty good damage here. And I go for the Draco Meteor into the Urshifu. And now I'm like, okay, this could get a bit spooky depending on what they exactly want to click. And I'm debating about like a crazy play here of potentially going for Tera Fire because one, I'll live Heat Crash from the Gouging Fire. And I could retaliate with an attack. I could go for the Wood Hammer because with the Embody Aspect +1, I'll be able to KO the Urshifu even if they go for Breaking Swipe and take the knockout because they can't Tera the Urshifu. Or I could go for Tera Fire, Ivy Cudgel because with the Embody Aspect negating the Breaking Swipe, but I still get the terrestrialization boost of the Ivy Cudgel being more damage. I was debating about KOing the Gouging Fire through this way. So that's why I end up deciding is to go for that play because I'm like, I think I knock out the Gouging Fire with the Tera Fire Ivy Cudgel. And then if they double up the Ogerpon with like I suspect potentially, I could get a Draco Meteor KO into the Urshifu as well. Because I do think this is Taunt and not Aqua Jet, but they do go for the Breaking Swipe. Does a good amount of damage to both my Pokemon. And I'm like, I think the Terrifier Ivy Cudgel should take the knockout here. If I went for the Wood Hammer, it also would have been nice, but it's still fine. As I do get the Ivy Cudgel, I do take the knockout on the Gouging Fire. I'm like, okay, don't have to worry about burning Bulwark, burning my Registeel, which is nice, and I don't have to worry about any more house ups. So who did they target with the Urshifu? They go for the close combat into my Regidrago, which does make things a bit more difficult because if they did target my Ogerpon, was like super safe for me, but granted, this is not the worst position out there because my Cresselia is still threatening a lot of damage into the Urshifu, and I decide I'm going to go on a Cresselia to get the Trick 'em Up now, because if there's a timing to get Trick 'em Up, it is absolutely now, as they decide to go out into their Dragonite. So now I can just go for a Wood Hammer and I can go for a Trick Room here, which is pretty safe for the most part. I'm pretty confident that Ogerpon can't live in extreme speed at this range because they don't have terrestrialization and there's no sort of ruin on the field. So I just go for the Wood Hammer and I'm just going to go for a Trick Room attempt, because if they switch out to get the Sword of Ruin, that's fine, as they go for extreme speed. And my head calcs were on point. Let me just say, I knew that wasn't KOing. Wood Hammer is going to KO the Urshifu, is going to take the knockout. I'm like, okay, that's perfect. That was like one of the biggest boosted threats gone to my Registeel. And now I'm in a fantastic spot because the Dragonite on this team usually runs Choice Band. That was Choice Band damage. And now Registeel should be able to come in and just beat whatever the remaining Mon is. So we'll be able to get a Trick 'em Up with the Cresselia. And here at this point, looking pretty good, as I will go out into the Registeel. And we'll see what the last Pokemon is. It's going to be the Chien-Pao. So here I am pretty happy about this because I feel like at this point, unless I get super unlucky, and even if I get unlucky, like I'm pretty sure that they need a lot of luck, I'm actually going to debate about protecting Moonblast. The reason I decide to protect here is because if they call me out and Sucker Punch Extreme Speed to Cresselia, I think that's like the way I could actually lose this game. So that's why. I also want to catch maybe a Protect from the POW. So this ends up working out pretty well for me because they're worried about me just doubling up the POW with like Body Press plus Moonblast, for example, or whatever attack I have with the Cresselia. So I'm able to catch Extreme Speed and get a free Iron Defense setup, and now I'm just going to be able to win the game because now I can just easily go for a Body Press into the POW and I can go for the Moonblast because they still have to go for the Sucker Punch Extreme Speed. And with Cresselia being at full, I'm like pretty sure that I'll live this. And even if I don't, like, I'm pretty sure I'll win the game anyway, because then I break the Sash on POW, and the Dragonite, as you can see from the Extreme Speed and Sword of Ruin, it does 15 HP. Like, you are not breaking through this Registeel, and they don't even go for the Sucker Punch. So at this point, like, there's not much they could do here, as the POW didn't get an attack off. It is going to get doubled up, taken down by the Moonblast, and now it's just Dragonite by itself, locked into Extreme Speed. And the Registeel is literally shrugging off. It's not like healing from the leftovers, but basically it was pretty close. Like, I took 4 HP of damage after the leftovers in Extreme Speed, but yeah, now at this point I can win the game by doing whatever at this point, as they do forfeit the game here. And yeah, as I mentioned before, Registeel really good as long as I set up properly, and the two threats were the lead. So once I got into the lead and positioned well, I was in a really great spot. And we have won the tour with triple Regis, which I'm kind of shocked by. I'm still absorbing like how this team was actually able to do well and it worked together. But yeah, I guess it does make sense, as I explained before. You have the Registeel, which is a great mon on its own, and then of course the fact that it's just able to support with the Regidrago, because, you know, having that steel typing really good against the Pokemon that Regidrago doesn't like, especially the Fairy and the other steel types, which, you know, with Body Press and Heavy Slam combination is really strong in Ogerpon Heartflame. Really good support mon, but also can be really offensive. The support with Tailwind and the Trick Room modes, and I don't know how I feel about Regis. I think that was the only mon I'm like iffy about still. It was able to do some work, but I do feel it was like definitely a bit of, you know, added on, and yeah, it definitely felt like, especially after reading the creator's thought process. But if you want to go check out that report, I'll link it down below in the description. And of course, if you want to check out more VGC content, of course, subscribe to the channel for more VGC content as always.